For most of us, it's something we just don't think about, right? Having a country, a passport, a nationality, it's just part of who we are. But imagine for a second, what if it wasn't a given? What if, legally speaking, you belonged nowhere?
No, really, think about that. What would that even feel like? No citizenship, no legal tie to any country on the entire planet. Well, for millions of people, this isn't some thought experiment. It's their actual, everyday reality. These are the world's stateless people. They're living without that one single thing that plugs the rest of us into the global system, a nationality.
Okay, so let's get into it. What does stateless actually mean? It's not just a vague feeling of not fitting in or some political buzzword. Nope, it's a very specific, very real legal status.
And here it is. This is the official legal definition, straight from international law. And the key thing to grab onto here is that it has nothing to do with how you feel or even where you live. It all comes down to how the laws of a country see you, or in this case, how they completely fail to see you at all.
Let's just zero in on that last part, because it's everything, not considered a national by any state. Think about what that means. Not one single government on Earth recognizes you as their citizen. You are, for all legal intents and purposes, a ghost. You're invisible to the system.
Now, this is a super common point of confusion. People hear stateless, and they immediately think refugee. But they're not the same thing, and it's a really crucial distinction to make, so let's break it down.
Okay, on one hand, you've got a refugee. A refugee is someone who had to flee their home country because of danger. But here's the key. They still have their original nationality. A stateless person, though, they don't have a nationality to begin with, period. They could have lived in the same town their entire life and never crossed a border. Now, can someone be both? Yes, tragically they can. But the fundamental difference is this. A refugee has a country they can't go back to. A stateless person has no country to claim them in the first place.
So you're probably wondering, how does this even happen? How does someone just not have a country? Well, it's almost never a choice. This isn't something people sign up for. Statelessness is almost always a byproduct of messy laws, complicated history, and politics.
I mean, sometimes it happens on a huge scale. A country might literally dissolve, right? New borders get drawn, and suddenly entire groups of people are left in this legal no man's land. Other times, it's baked right into the laws themselves. Discriminatory rules that say you can't be a citizen because of your ethnicity or your gender. Or it can be something that seems so small, like two countries just having conflicting laws on the books. And because of that tiny gap, a newborn baby can fall right through the cracks and end up with no nationality at all.
And look, this isn't just some abstract legal theory we're talking about. Being stateless has real, profound, and often devastating consequences for a person's life. So let's talk about what this actually looks like day in and day out.
For starters, think about something as basic as travel. No nationality means no passport. And no passport means you can't legally cross a border. You can't visit family. You can't go study somewhere else. You can't seek opportunities abroad. You're basically trapped by invisible walls.
And those walls, they don't just affect one person. They can stretch across generations. In so many countries, you need proof of citizenship just to enroll your kid in school. Think about that. A stateless child can be locked out of the classroom, their entire future handicapped before it even gets a chance to start.
And how are you supposed to build a life, getting a formal legal job? That almost always requires some kind of national ID. If you don't have one, you're pushed into the shadows, into the informal economy, where you're totally vulnerable to exploitation, with zero legal protection.
It can even be a matter of life and death. I mean, imagine getting sick. In many places, accessing public health care is impossible without citizenship. So you're left without even basic medical care, right when you need it most.
What about the dream of just putting down roots, owning a piece of land, or even just a small home? So often that right is tied directly to your nationality. For a stateless person, that simple, fundamental dream can be completely out of reach, legally speaking. So it all comes down to this, really. If no state in the world claims you as one of its own, who protects you? Who do you turn to? The answer is pretty much no one. You're living outside the protection of the law, with basically nowhere to turn.
So when you zoom out and look at the big picture, you start to see that statelessness isn't just a series of individual tragedies. It's fundamentally a failure of the whole system we've created, this global system where our basic rights are funneled through our relationship with a country.
And this is where the central problem lies. You have international law, which sets up a framework and basically says, hey, countries, try not to make people stateless. But
At the end of the day, each individual country holds all the cards. They get to decide who is and who isn't a citizen. And when their national laws don't line up with those international principles, that's when you get these gaps and people fall right through them.
Okay, before we wrap this up, let's just quickly debunk a few common myths that are floating around out there. Myth number 1, stateless people are illegal. Nope, it's a legal condition, not a crime. Myth number 2, this is a rare fringe problem. Wrong again. We're talking about millions of people. And finally, the idea that stateless people are all migrants. Not true at all. Many have never left the place they were born, and their families might have been there for generations.
And that really brings us to the most important thing to remember from all of this. We tend to think of our nationality as something automatic, something natural, like the air we breathe, but it's not. Nationality is a legal creation. It's a status that's granted, or not granted, by a state. And when that system fails, it leaves people as ghosts, living invisibly in a world built for citizens. So the question we're left with is, what does it say about our global community that a person can be born and yet legally belong to nowhere at all?